You've probably seen pictures of the Hoover Dam, right? This massive, beautiful curve of concrete just sitting out in the middle of the desert. But what if I told you the real story here isn't just about incredible engineering? No, it's a story about desperation, about pure guts, and about building something that seemed impossible right in the middle of one of America's darkest times. And to really get it, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Someone who was there once said, "This place was hell on earth." And you have to understand, back in 1931, this wasn't some famous landmark. This was Black Canyon, a scorching, absolutely unforgiving piece of the world where thousands of men were getting ready to go to war with a river. And really, this whole story boils down to one epic showdown. In one corner, you've got this wild beast of a river, the Colorado. They actually nicknamed it the Red Bull because it was so destructive. It would rage and flood farms in the spring and then completely dry up in the summer. And in the other corner, you have a nation brought to its knees. It's the Great Depression. A staggering 1 out of every 4 men was unemployed. People were desperate for work, any work at all. So you can just imagine what happened when the government announced the biggest federal contract in American history to build a dam in the absolute middle of nowhere. This wasn't just a job opening. No, this was a lifeline. It was like a call to arms for a nation that was starving. And the response? It was absolutely overwhelming. Look at these numbers. For just 5,000 jobs, 42,000 desperate men and their families poured into this barren wasteland. They set up these makeshift shanty towns they called rag towns, enduring blistering heat, rattlesnakes, and choking dust, all for a slim chance at a paycheck. The competition was just that fierce. Okay, so the guy in charge of this whole chaotic scene was an engineering legend named Frank Crowe. His nickname was Hurry Up Crowe, which tells you pretty much everything you need to know about him. And right out of the gate, he was staring down a problem that seemed, well, completely impossible. And he had to solve it before they could even think about pouring a single drop of concrete. So here it is. How do you pour concrete into a river that just won't stop flowing? Really, think about that. You can't just put up a detour sign for the Colorado River. If you want to build this massive thing on solid bedrock, you first have to get the entire river out of the way. You literally have to move it. Crowe's plan was audacious. Honestly, it was pure insanity. He decided they were going to drill 4 gigantic tunnels. We're talking 56 feet in diameter, straight through the solid volcanic rock of the canyon walls. They invented these monster trucks called drilling jumbos that let 30 guys attack the rock face all at once. The work never stopped. It was just this brutal 24/7 cycle. Drill, load it with dynamite, blast, and then clear out all the rubble and deadly fumes. But that incredible speed, it came at a horrifying price. The tunnels were constantly filled with truck exhaust fumes. Men were getting dizzy, collapsing, and some of them died. And here's the really dark part. Officially, the cause of death was listed as pneumonia, but that was a flat-out lie. It was a cold, cynical way for the company to avoid paying insurance claims to the families. The real killer in those tunnels was carbon monoxide poisoning. But incredibly, after just 1 year of this hellish work, the tunnels were complete. They dumped tons of rock to block the river's original path, and then it happened. For the first time in geologic history, the Colorado River took a sharp left turn and just vanished into the side of the mountain. Imagine the silence. That constant roar of the water was just gone. All that was left was an empty, dry riverbed. The foundation was finally exposed. So the river's out of the way. Great. But now the focus shifts upwards, way up. The problem now was the canyon walls themselves. They were completely unstable, with loose rock constantly threatening to fall and kill the workers below. They needed a whole new kind of hero to make this site safe. And these guys were called high scalers. Get this? A lot of them were former circus acrobats or sailors, people who were used to heights. They were lowered 700 feet down the sheer cliff face on nothing more than a rope. Their job? To swing through the air with jackhammers and pry bars, knocking off any loose rock. It was, without a doubt, one of the most dangerous jobs on Earth. Innovation is often born from pure necessity. Falling rocks were a constant killer, so the workers started improvising. They took their cloth hats, dipped them in hot tar, and let them harden. And it worked. The company, 6 companies, saw how effective it was and ordered thousands of these hard-boiled hats, essentially inventing the modern hard hat right there on the canyon walls. All right, so the river is moved, the canyon walls are clean, the site is finally ready for concrete. But now, the engineers were up against a fundamental problem of physics that threatened to make the entire project a complete failure. So here's the problem. Concrete generates an incredible amount of heat as it cures. And the engineers calculated that if they had poured the dam as one single continuous block of concrete, the chemical reaction would have taken 125 years to cool down. The internal stress from all that heat would have caused the entire dam to crack and literally crumble into useless rubble. Well, they didn't have 125 years, they had less than 2. The solution they came up with was pure genius. First, they decided not to build a single dam, but to build it as a series of 230 interlocking columns, almost like a giant 3D puzzle. And second, to deal with all that heat, they decided to build the world's largest refrigerator right in the middle of the desert. This was engineering on a scale that is just hard to wrap your head around. They built a refrigeration plant that could produce 1,000 tons of ice every single day, and they embedded 582 miles of steel pipes inside the concrete blocks, pumping ice-cold water through them to suck the heat out as the concrete cured. And what's crazy is, those pipes are still inside the dam today. And the result of all this? Astounding. What should have taken over a century to cool down was accomplished in just 2 months. The physics problem was solved. The pace was just relentless. A bucket of concrete arrived every 78 seconds, 24 hours a day for 2 whole years. To give you a sense of the sheer volume, the project used enough concrete to pave a 2-lane highway from San Francisco all the way across the country to New York City. An entire road across the continent is sitting in that one canyon. By early 1935, the wall was complete. The final massive components were being put into place, and the team prepared to shut the tunnels for good and give birth to a brand new sea in the middle of the desert. And these final pieces were massive undertakings themselves. You've got the 4 iconic Art Deco intake towers that act like gatekeepers, controlling the flow of water. That water then rushes down these enormous 30-foot wide pipes called penstocks, so large they had to build a dedicated factory on site just to make them, before finally hitting the turbines in the powerhouse to generate electricity. In February of 1935, they sealed those diversion tunnels, and the Colorado River stopped flowing for the first time in history. Behind the dam, the water began to rise, slowly creating Lake Mead. It would take over 6 years for it to fill completely, becoming the largest man-made reservoir in the entire country. And the final balance sheet? It was just as impressive as the engineering. Against all odds, Frank Crowe finished the project a full 2 years ahead of schedule. The dam, which cost $49 million, paid for itself completely with interest, just through the sale of the electricity it generated. This was the power that would fuel the explosive growth of Los Angeles and, you guessed it, Las Vegas. It really stands today as a monument, not just to concrete and steel, but to human will. It's a testament to what a desperate nation can achieve when it's faced with an impossible challenge. It tamed a wild river and, in doing so, forever reshaped the American West. In this battle, the engineers definitely won. A wild river was tamed. But it leaves us with a critical question for today. These massive structures were built to control epic floods and harness a powerful river. But in a future that looks increasingly drier, what is the long-term legacy for these titans of concrete in a world with less and less water?